diagnosed with diabetes after a triggering event? We haven't met yet. My name's Bowie. I've had type 1 diabetes for over 23 years. I am healing naturally and creating community with those that don't want to have diabetes anymore. Some diagnoses come after an acute bout with illness, trauma, depression, or infection. Personally, I got diagnosed after a long bout with Lyme's disease. I've heard of people getting diagnosed after a completely unrelated operation. I've heard of people going through PTSD and at the end of it getting diagnosed with diabetes. It could be flu, it could be COVID. There's a lot of different reasons. But the reason I bring it up is because it is important to remember that just because that condition, disease, illness, infection was the triggering event, that does not necessarily mean that it's the cause of type 1 diabetes. And that's because as we've learned more about the development of type 1 diabetes, the timeline of disease development has continued to expand. And I want you to take a look at this graph from the JDRF, or Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund, in which they are breaking down diabetes into 4 different stages. So you can see on the graph that most of our journeys with type 1 diabetes starts in stage 3. Meanwhile, we've gone through stage 1 and 2 without even knowing it. What was initially considered this one big event of beta cell wipeout and insulin deletion is now being considered a much more progressive loss of beta cell mass and insulin production. The way JDRF has represented it in this picture is that there have been 2 stages of progressive beta cell loss that didn't even have any symptoms. The triggering event that we have been blaming for the development of the disease really is only the beginning of the 3rd stage. So it's not at all the reason that you have diabetes, it's simply the straw that broke the camel's back. And so now where the real work is to be done is to look at what our foundational physiological and biological conditions were before this triggering event. Because we realize that an infection, an illness, trauma, depression, they all have very real cellular effects. It could be magnesium wasting, it could be over iron retention, it could be malnutrition. But the only reason these triggering events had the effect that they did was because they were triggering an overburdened system already.